I want to present Raju Narisetti, who is a professor of business and journalism at Columbia University in New York. In a career spanning 3 decades, he is unique in having started or run major newsrooms on 3 continents and has helped major news companies like the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the News Corp deal with continuing digital transformations. Raju asks if the answer to regaining trust is right in front of us. Is it free and global and organically expanding? What if it's actually Wikipedia? Could Wikipedia, with all its warts and issues, be the future of rebuilding trust in accurate news and information? Please welcome Raju Narisetti.
Hi. There are a whole bunch of seats here if you want to come sit down instead of standing back there. They say they're reserved, but that's reserved for you, actually. Thank you for being here. You have lots of choices to be elsewhere. The show of hands, how many of you have heard, read, and believe that journalism and the news business is dying? A fair number of you, right? So to borrow a phrase from somebody you know well, the president of my country, Donald Trump, that is fake news. And I'll tell you why. I'll give you a few examples. So I used to work at the Wall Street Journal, worked there for like some 20 years. At its peak, if you add up all the newspapers that the Wall Street Journal ever sold in US, in Europe, and in Asia, we probably had about 2.3 million copies a day being sold. This was 5, 10 years ago. They're probably at about 1.8 million now. But the Wall Street Journal today has anywhere between 65 to 85 million people consuming the Wall Street Journal every month online. So people could say, no, it's the Wall Street Journal. It's a very specialty business paper. So let's talk about the New York Times. I live in New York. At its peak, in its heyday, New York Times, which is 166 years old, probably sold about 2 million newspapers a day, right? That's the peak of the New York Times. Yesterday, there were 85 million people on the New York Times website. Right? So there's, in many ways, you pick a brand, and I'll tell you why they're not dying. In fact, way more people are consuming it. So we are in Norway. The largest paper here, I think, is the Aftenpost, which has print circulation of about 250,000 a day. Right? They now have online 870,000 people reading it, right? Which is 4 times the number of people who read the paper in physical. So they're doing really great. So it's not just individual papers. Let's talk about just the industry. And again, let's take, I have some numbers, I want to be accurate. Let's take Norway. In 1950, there were 96 newspapers in Norway, right, in 1950. That number went down to 83 newspapers in 1965. Right? So it went down from 96 to 83 in 65. Can anybody guess in 2000, 2010, 2015, how many registered daily publications there are in Norway? The reference point is 96 in 1950, 83 in 1965. Anybody wants to take a guess? Print. 297. So who here thinks that the news business is dying? Want to raise your hands now? Right. And the reason for that is very simple, which is digital. All of us sometimes blame platforms, Twitter, and all these things for all the bad things. But the reality is, with this device, for the first time in the world, any news brand could reach literally anybody in the world and has been able to, right? So it's really given us with the ability to kind of, click your computers, flick your finger on an iPad. Now these days, talk to your device. You can literally go to any newsroom anywhere in the world. As a result, there have never been more people reading journalism since the invention of the Gutenberg press in 1450. There have never been more people, right? So think of this as a very happy problem, right? We are clearly producing something that more and more people want to consume every single day. We could have easily been To pick an example, we could have easily been in the whale oil business. Whale oil used to be big in Norway, used to be used for making soaps. Imagine if we were in that business and nobody wants that anymore, right? We don't have that problem. We are in the news business. More and more people are consuming us every day. And it's a very unique industry. You don't think about it very much, but you can't point to a single other industry where the product is new literally every 24 days, right? There is nothing about the news business that can be repeated. Every 24 days, and these days every hour, every 15 minutes, the product is created, it's consumed, it's finished. You can't think of any other industry in the world that does that. I mean, Coca-Cola produces a lot of new Coke cans every day, but it's the same Coke, just the new cans. News is the only business that, so we are in a very, very kind of happy state. The problem, as all of you know, has been in terms of making money, right? How do we kind of, all these people are reading us and we still seem to can't make enough money. I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about another problem that's emerged in the last 2 years, which is this decline in trust in the news business. We've never had more supply of news. We've never had more readers of news. We've never had such little trust in news as that has happened in the last couple of years. And a lot of the blame has been, I think rightfully so, pointed at false information, fake news, and things like that that have reduced our trust in media. And that's an important aspect of why trust is down. Trust is also down and has implications. PJ talked about security and journalists being prosecuted. That's an important problem that has emerged. Trust is also down because you could argue that as more and more people put up paywalls and start charging, fewer and fewer people can access that. So if you don't access it, then you don't know, you don't have a way of verifying that. So that's the reason. You've all heard of filter bubbles. The next session, Katrina at Mozilla, Facebook and all will talk a little bit more about it, I'm sure. Those have caused a decline in trust. The other reason, especially in my country, the US, the decline in trust is also because when you look at a newsroom, when you look at the journalists, they don't look like you, meaning that they don't represent enough women, they don't represent enough people of color. As a result, there is a decline in trust because how can a newsroom that doesn't look like me reflect what my needs are, right? And for example, we missed the Trump story before the election, right? Nobody thought he would win. Most news media didn't think. And that's a reflection of our staff, and that's a reflection of then what we produce, and then that reduces trust. There's been a lot of effort in the last year or so to try to increase trust, but in a very narrow way, which is how do we combat fake news? How do we kind of deal with false information? Just before coming here, I Googled how to fight fake news. I just put that in Google. I got 175 million search results, right? So there's a lot going on in terms of like helping each one of us kind of deal with that. I will argue that that's a problem because if you read like me or most people in this room, if you read 10, 15, 20 different sources, the challenge of applying these filters and tools should not be left up to individuals. It should be really up to the newsrooms, right? So it's a whole different problem in trying to solve. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about in the remaining time is that each of us individually has a responsibility to deal with this issue because if we don't have a trusted, free, and informed society, then we don't have democracies, we don't have healthy kind of governance systems. So each of us, we can either say it's the New York Times' problem, it's the Fox News' problem to give me correct news and why they're not doing it and complain about it, or we could try to apply some of these tools that are being given to kind of use as filters, but each of us individually has a role to play in this. And I don't have an answer to how do we solve for the problem of if, thanks to President Trump, if a third of my country believes that everything that the New York Times writes is false, how does the New York Times get past that is a profound, wicked problem that I don't have an answer to. But as individuals, I think we have an ability to address this issue globally, and this is where my belief in Wikipedia comes into play. I'm on the board of Wikimedia Foundation, which runs this global organization, so I have a bias, so I'm admitting that up front. But here is why, and I'll give you some numbers. Many of us are familiar with English Wikipedia. Clearly in this audience, you're probably familiar with the Norwegian Wikipedia. The reality is it's in 293 languages over the last 17 years. There are 40 million articles in Wikipedia. Every day, 200 editors actually kind of voluntarily contribute to Wikipedia all over the world. So in the time my 17 minutes are up, 6,000 articles would have been edited in Wikipedia. Right? On any given day, about 2,000 new articles are added, and that's the largest repository. There are 3.5 billion words on Wikipedia, which is about 60 times larger than Encyclopedia Britannica. Right? So we actually have a source that is in all the languages, available all around the world, and it's free, that is providing mostly accurate information. And I say mostly because there will always be in a encyclopedia of that size, which is real time, and every one of you can edit, there will always be some fiction, there'll always be some friction around that on what is truth. But the good news about the Wikipedia model is it's self-correcting, meaning that because everybody can edit, anybody can edit. And as a result, oftentimes false information and mistruths don't stay very long, or if they're there, they're constantly being questioned. Remember I told you that 2,000 articles are added to Wikipedia every day? 1,000 articles are deleted from Wikipedia every day because people are saying, wait, this is actually not true. Right? So that push and pull and the ability for any of us to participate in it really make it the kind of platform that potentially has the ability to address false information, create some trust around the world because it's in your languages, it's free, which is really important. The other larger context to think about here is that it's only in November of this year, which is a couple of months away, it's only in November that 50% of the world will be on the internet. Right? Of all these years later, only 50%, and that's going to happen in November. So if you think of all the rest of the people who are coming online around the world, many of them probably won't be able to afford to pay for these news products, which are trusted or which are good, right? So where do they turn to? Chances are that a lot of them will turn to Wikipedia. So if you want to have the world be better informed and have more facts and more information at their disposal, I think that is a solution. And the reason it's a solution is because every single one of you in this room can contribute to it, can change things, can add things, can question things. I'm not saying that Wikipedia is the answer. I think it can be an effective answer to a lot of the broader issues we are seeing in the society. There are significant problems with Wikipedia, and I'll talk about one of them in particular. Any platform that, remember I talked about how the newsrooms have lost trust because they're not diverse enough and they don't reflect the society they're talking to. Wikipedia has a similar problem. By last count, only about 17% of the profiles of people on Wikipedia are women. Right? So it's a significant, the gender gap on Wikipedia is pretty significant. And you can imagine, like, why should we trust a platform that seems to be so underrepresenting women is a significant issue. Only about 13% of the 200,000 editors I talked about are women. By last count, only about 20% of the users of Wikipedia are women. So this is a significant issue that we are very kind of consciously focused on. There's lots of projects. There's an amazing project called Women in Red. There's a WikiGap project. There's lots of projects that are trying to get more women to be represented on Wikipedia, to more women to use it. And it's an ongoing global challenge. And the reason it's interesting is that because all of you can help with that as well. So there are other problems as well. 38% of people on Wikipedia say they've faced online harassment, right? That's like a 1 in 3. And the reason that's important is because when you face online harassment, you don't usually go back and do things. But 38% seems large to you. In the US, 73% of people who are online say they have faced some kind of online harassment, right? So by that standard, Wikipedia is actually pretty good, but still has an issue. So a couple of areas where we are really devoting time and energy is we're using things like artificial intelligence to actually map the editor-contributor conversations on Wikipedia to say, is this language indicating to us that this could turn into harassment? Right? So we are applying online and artificial intelligence tools to help make the community safer and make it more representative and make it more diverse. So in many ways, I think we have in front of us an opportunity for each one of us to help humanity actually have access to better information on whatever topic you care about, right? Because any topic you care about will be on Wikipedia. So you can go contribute, you can read. It's a completely voluntary organization, so feel free to give some money to it if you're so inclined. But that may be one of the ways, while how as a society, as individuals, we address this issue of declining trust. And Sophia, who will come back up here, will tell you that her dad often has things written about him on Wikipedia which are not true. And we were talking about yesterday, and that's a problem. But the good news is that there are lots of people also kind of pointing that out and kind of wanting to kind of fix it. We have lots of issues around, the Russians write way too many bad things about the Ukrainians and all these kind of issues. But all these issues are solvable by each one of us. That makes it kind of the kind of platform that we would want to resolve this issue of media trust. I have a minute, so I'm going to give it back. Thank you.